Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review covers the Ferrari 612 Scaglietti in 1/24 scale by Revell. It's kit number 07364 in the European boxing. And the Scaglietti was named after Sergio Scaglietti, who built the bodies for Ferrari just after World War II. Now, it was shown for the first time at the Detroit Motor Show in '04, and it has a 6-liter 12-cylinder engine, developing 540 horsepower and a top speed of nearly 200 miles an hour. Now, it's a skill level 3 for the advanced builder, and it was released in '09 and it's been out of production, but you can still find these online at auction sites. It comes with 122 pieces molded in white, chrome, clear, black vinyl tires, and water slide decals. It comes with some nice instructions, and when you're done, it's about 7 3/4 inches long by 3.5 inches wide and 2 1/4 inches high. Here are the contents of the kit, and you also get a nice set of decals with good register, and they're very colorful. For the most part, we'll be using liquid cement for the build, sometimes super glue for strength, and occasionally white glue or clear glue for the windows. Now remember to use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines for any of the products that you see or hear in the review. Construction starts with the motor, so grab these parts out of the kit's box and we'll put them together in the basic engine block configuration like this. Paint this unit in aluminum and the filters in front a dark gray. Next, locate these pieces, and we'll be adding those to the driver's side and painting them aluminum. The exception is that part number 52 is glued to 48 and it's painted semi-gloss black. And the part number 60 is painted steel color. Next, we'll be adding these parts 56 and 7, and they're painted steel color. And part 59 is also steel and semi-gloss black for the highlights. 57 then is glued to 56, and then we're going to assemble the pieces in the fashion you see here in this illustration. Now we'll add the valley cover and the front engine and the valve covers. And part number 62 is aluminum, gloss black, and guards red, and then also some anthracite gray metallic gets thrown in there. Part number 61 is painted gloss black and silver. 63 then is painted guards red, and then parts 61 and 2 are glued to the engine assembly, and then 63 is glued to part number 62. You can see here with the heads, valve covers, and the intake cover painted red that the engine assembly is coming along nicely. Now we're going to add the engine decals, and they can be applied to the pieces here as you see. Get the pieces out for the transaxle and glue the top onto the lower section there, and then add the end plate in the back end. The main section of transaxle aluminum, and then Model Master's semi-gloss black on the axles and some anthracite gray metallic on the ends. Find these parts in the kit and paint the tunnel cover aluminum, and then the exhaust tubes are painted with some silver color or a steel, and they're glued to the number 36 tunnel cover. Grab the radiator fans and the radiator housing for those, and we're going to paint the housing gloss black, and the blades on the fans there are painted gray. Find the floor pan and the front floor pan section there, and glue 39 to 80 on the bottom of the engine area, and we're going to paint that gloss black, and then stage the exhaust there to glue that to the bottom of the floor pan there, so you can see as it looks here when it's finished. Part number 43 gets painted flat black, and then the engine assembly can be glued to the chassis assembly. The radiator assembly then is glued to the chassis, and part number 43 is glued to the engine assembly transmission area. Now the differential assembly can be glued to part number 43 and the chassis assembly. Things are coming together pretty nicely here, and you can see the front and the rear view of the chassis up to this point. We'll finish painting the chassis after the wheel wells are glued in. Locate the control arm pieces 68 and 9, and we're going to paint those testers aluminum. And then also we'll add 68 and 67, and they get painted aluminum. And then 68 is glued to part 67 here for that control arm assembly. Now we can follow the same process for the other side of the suspension subassembly. Part number 66 here, the control arm section, it gets painted gloss black with some aluminum as well. And the base color is silver color, so get that painted and let that dry. That is ready. We're going to add part number 66 to the hole with a groove cut out on the passenger side of the rear side of the chassis. Continuing our work on the suspension assembly here, part number 44 gets installed into the passenger rear of the chassis and attached to part 40. Now then the 67 and 68 assembly is glued to the passenger rear of the chassis, and part number 44 then is attached to part 68. Then we've got part 66 installed into the hole on part 67. Now locate the shock, the control arm assembly, subassembly there, and related pieces, and we're going to do the same thing and install those onto the driver's side of the rear. Find these pieces in the kit, and parts 79 and 78 then are painted gloss black, and then 79 is glued to the chassis and 78 is glued to parts 44 and 5. Out of the kit, we're going to paint the pieces number 28 and 29 aluminum, and then part number 81 is a gray metallic. Now we're going to glue that to the bottom of the chassis there, the two side pieces. The part 81, the cover plate gets glued to the bottom of the chassis to cover up the differential area. Next we'll paint the bottom plate there gloss black, and then we're going to strip the paint from the exhaust tips, and I painted those anthracite gray in the middle centers and outside a bright silver to give it more of an authentic look, and then glue those pieces to the frame there, and then we'll be covering those up with the bottom chassis piece. The rear fender wells gloss black as well, and let those dry, and then we'll be gluing that to the chassis with parts 67 and 69 sticking out through that piece, which is part 89. So paint the control arm here that you see part number 70 aluminum color, and then the fender well section is part 76, and that gets glued in place to that section. Do the same thing for the opposite side of the vehicle and opposite pieces. Next we'll work on front fender wells, etc. And part 77 gets painted anthracite gray metallic, and we'll use some gloss black and testers aluminum on parts 73 and 4, and they get painted silver as well. Now both part 72s are gloss black with some silver for interior, and part 72 gets installed into a hole with a groove cut out on the driver's front of the chassis, just like in the rear chassis assembly. And now we can add the spindles here, and there's no glue there. Part 77 gets attached to part 74, and then that's installed onto the driver's side of the chassis, sliding part 77 between the engine assembly and the radiator. Now the driver's side fender assembly, that's part 71. It gets glued to the driver's front side of the chassis, and 72 gets inserted into a hole on part 71, and 74 is attached to part 76. Now we can look for a hole with a groove cut out on the passenger side front of the chassis, and then part 73 gets attached to the other end of 77, and then part 74 gets glued onto the passenger front of the chassis. Now the passenger side fender assembly is glued to the passenger front chassis just like the other side, and part 72 gets inserted into a hole on part 70. and then 73 is attached to part 76 to work miracles on the front end. I painted the centers of the chrome wheels a silver color, and also the brake rotor here is steel and the calipers are black. And then go ahead and install the two wheel halves and trap one of the front wheels each for each side. Then glue the backing, or put the backing plates into place on the chassis, and then we can add the wheels onto that. Also, some decals that go on the calipers on the so install those before you place the wheels into position. We'll give the rear wheels the same treatment, and they get painted and installed in practically the same fashion, just the size difference between the fronts and the backs. But go ahead and install those, and once you get those glued into place, then we will have a rolling chassis on which to build the rest of our model kit. We'll have to mix some paint for this next section. It calls for a mixture of gloss black and dark gray in about a 50-50 mix ratio. And then the seat backs, part number 96, are painted with that, and the headrest of part 96 is painted with some wood color, and 97 is painted with the 50-50 mix. 93 is also painted wood color for a simulated leather look. So you can see the console gets painted brown. There's some tester's wood on the seats and the seat headrest, and there's some gloss black and gray metallic that adorns the console and the back deck and the floor mats. So go ahead and do some detailing on your interior. And then part 92, it's chrome, but I painted it silver and then glued that to the interior dish. And where decal number 36 was supposed to be applied, it was painted silver instead to give it a more realistic look. The door panels were given the same treatment with the 50-50 mix of dark gray and black, and also some brown for the center section. Now the driver's seat assembly and the passenger seat assembly are glued to the interior, and part number 100 is glued to the passenger side and part 99 to the driver's side interior. Decal 17 then it gets applied to the interior there as well. Here's the front view of the chassis with the interior bucket installed into place, and also from the rear view it's a pretty interesting looking combination of colors in the interior there. Now we'll work with the dash assembly there, and the upper section of the dash gets painted with some wood tones underneath, and some silver in the center stripe, and also some flat black. And we're going to also paint 16 with a mixture of that black and gray mix, and then it gets glued to part 17, and then all of the appropriate decals are applied to that, and 27 gets applied for the US version onto part 17 also. The steering wheel and the column shrouds, etc., get the 50-50 dark gray black treatment, and then the two pieces there, rows of buttons for the wheel, they're painted aluminum. Now we're going to assemble all these pieces to each other, and then that column assembly is ready to go. And the prancing horse there is applied to the steering wheel as well. Locate the pedal assemblies there and paint the brackets and stems flat black, and the pads are aluminum. So then the steering column assembly can be glued into the dashboard along with the pedal assembly. Get the body and the related pieces here out of the kit, and clean up the minor parting lines that you find on the body and maybe some attachment points there. And it calls for painting the body with a paint mixture of 10% aluminum, 10% night blue gloss, and 10% gloss blue, along with 70% ultramarine blue. Now you can use your best guess, but this is the recommendation for the paint mix. And of course, with that kind of a mix, you'll need to airbrush this or you can find or use a substitute that you feel is close enough for an actual Ferrari color. So go ahead and spray your body and let that set aside to dry. Okay, now I'll get the hood and the hinge there out and paint that with the body color mixture. And then the inset underneath the hood and the bottom gets painted with the anthracite gray metallic. And then part 27 here, that hinge is painted with the body color as well. Now remember, if I haven't mentioned it before, always scrape off any paint or chrome plating when you glue pieces together for a good bond. So we'll glue that bracket there to the hood at this time. Okay, so after the glue has set on the hood hinge and bracket there, we can go ahead and place the hood into position. No glue is needed. It just fits in there, and it's got some stays that keep the hood hinge in place and the hood on top there. Inside there, you see the filler cap has gotten a little metallic treatment to it. Now we're going to add some decals there on the lower part of that inner fender. And also on the other side, there's another one, decals, so 15, 16, and they get put into place now. On the lower part of the hood, you've got some decals, 28 and 29. So go ahead and install those at this time. Go ahead and get these parts out, the headlight buckets there, and some of the glass work. And we're going to paint parts 2 and 5 with the blue paint mix, and then add some silver details as you see here. Now both of the part number 4s and 3s have edges or sides that are brush painted with the blue paint, and one part 3 and one part 4 then are glued to part number 2, the bucket, with some clear part cement or white glue, and one of the 3 and 4 pieces are glued to the other one, and with the same white glue or clear glue. We can add these parts. Part number 11 here, it gets painted with that 50-50 mix of dark gray and black. And there's a silver detailing on it that I kind of felt looked better than the decal that was supposed to be applied there. So go ahead and paint these up and let them dry. Now we can add part number 11, that's the visor and roof console there. And part 32 gets airbrushed with the blue mixture and glued into the body, which locks the hood hinges into place, that brace there. And the headlight assemblies 5 and 2 get glued into the body as well. Now we need some very varied pieces. We're going to install the dashboard into the body at this time. And the windshield gets glued into the body with some clear part cement. And part number 10 also glued to the body with, and part number 2 assembly with some of that clear cement or white glue. Part number 9 also installed into the body with some of the same. And then part 5 assembly gets some clear part cement and installed as well. Part number 6 is painted tester's silver color, and then it gets glued into the front of the body. Now we'll take the rear fascia panel there, and it gets painted body color. And when it's dry, we're going to use the license plate bracket back there, and that gets painted flat black and glued to the fascia. And then that assembly is glued to the back of the body. Okay, now we're going to work with the rear tail lights, and you take 2 of these parts number 33, and they get glued to the outside taillight sections. But before you do that, paint those acrylic clear red with the center hub being painted clear orange. Okay, now the inners here, other part 33s, they get painted clear red, but you leave the center hub free, and you paint the back pegs of those 2 silver, as it'll look like backup lights before they're glued into the other tail light holes there. And use some clear part cement or white glue for that. Grab the side windows out of the kit, and those are parts 7 and 8, and they get detailed with some flat black, and you'll paint the quarter rib there trim piece and the front vent section. Now part 8 gets glued into the driver's side of the body with some clear part cement, and part 7 is glued to the passenger side in the same manner. It's time to mate the body to the chassis. So as usual, you'll kind of spread the body sides out a little bit over the fender walls, and but before you do that, locate your gluing points. Find a place for 2 parts to contact on 4 corners inside, and then go ahead and add some good strong glue there, either super glue or epoxy, and then fit that into position. And I use some rubber bands here to hold the assemblies together to make sure that we got a good match and mate while the glue dried. We can remove the rubber bands. You don't want them to set on there too long anyway. And we're going to add some pieces you see here. Remove the hood carefully, just kind of squeeze it carefully, get that piece off. And we're going to add parts 21 and 2 to the hood section there. So go ahead, those are painted flat black and then glued to part number 20. We can add the side mirrors now, so assemble the reflective sections there after you've painted the mirrors with the body color, and that's dry. And then use some clear part cement on that. Then we're going to use some, probably super glue is the best way to add the mirrors to the body. And then decal 33 and 4 can be used there, but I thought it looked a little better without the decals. That's up to you. That's your call. I'll add some of the external decals. Decal number 2 are applied to the rims. That's your wheel rims. And number 43 just gets cut out and glued to the front of the car using some white glue. It's not removed from the backing paper, just to glue it into place. Decal 1 gets applied to the front grille area there, and decal 3 to the front fenders. Decal 11 goes on the gas cap cover. Decal number 44 gets applied to the rear deck, and decal 13 to the trunk. Decal 12 is applied to the trunk as well, and number 8 gets applied to the rear chassis section of the car. Decal number 9 to the rear chassis section, and 3 is applied to the front fenders, and both of the decal 32s are applied to the rear bumper. And for the US version, 2 of the decal 32s are applied to the rear quarter panels of the car. Well, there you have it. This spectacular supercar looks great in the blue mix, and it would look good in either the European or American configuration, and that's accomplished with a couple of decals and as you're going along on your build. But it goes together very well. It's a very nicely designed kit. All the parts fit together perfectly. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. I hope you liked this premium step-by-step scale model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our videos, or you can find us at Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.